Hello and welcome to HITC Sevens, and to today's video, which I'm recording in my boxers because it's 24 degrees in my house and rising, just to give you all a lovely visual image. I'm not complaining because soon it will be wet and miserable again, but if you see an HITC Sevens GoFundMe page to buy me an AC unit in the coming weeks, well, at least now you know why. Right, to the video. 9 times out of 10, a national team's best player is very obvious. Using the Euros as just an example, Poland's best player is clearly Robert Lewandowski, Portugal's main man is of course Cristiano Ronaldo, and Belgium would be lost without big Thomas Vermaelen. So, a nation star man tends to go without saying. But what about every national team at Euro 2020's most underrated player? Well, today that is the question I am pondering and wrestling with. But as always with these types of videos, underrated is a bit of an ambiguous term. I'll be naming the player who I think is the outright most underrated player in each national team squad, rather than the player from that national team who I think is most likely to exceed expectations at Euro 2020. But in some instances, when those two players are not the same, I will try to mention both. Without further ado then, here are just my views on the most underrated player in every Euro 2020 squad. Turkey. Kenan Karaman. Though it is very difficult and awfully subjective trying to determine who is and isn't underrated, by my reckoning, Turkey have more underrated players at Euro 2020 than just about any other national team. So, we're off to a strong start. I think the exploits of Zeki Çelik and Burak Yilmaz at Lille last season have gone a little under the radar just due to Ligue 1's modest international viewing figures compared to, say, La Liga or the Premier League. But I think Şenol Güneş's most underrated player is Kenan Karaman. One of a number of players in this video, of whom I think you could say this about, Karaman always seems to step it up a notch on the international stage. A free agent, Karaman just left Fortuna Düsseldorf, having spent 3 seasons with the second Bundesliga team. Capable of playing out wide on the left or through the middle, Karaman is a skillful forward who likes to run at players. On paper, I wouldn't put him in Turkey's strongest 11, but in real life, he seems key to the way in which Şenol Güneş wants his team to play, and I wouldn't be at all surprised to see him start in the Euro 2020 tournament opener between Turkey and Italy, which may already have taken place by the time this video comes out. Italy. Andrea Belotti. I don't expect Andrea Belotti to start for Roberto Mancini at Euro 2020, but that doesn't mean he won't make an impact. In Ciro Immobile and Andrea Belotti, Italy have 2 radically different types of centre-forwards. And though Immobile is much more prolific, were I the Italy boss, which I am of course not, I would start Belotti. A titan incher in for Torino over the last 6 seasons, Belotti's passion and desire is a sight to behold. There are many more talented centre-forwards at Euro 2020, and even in the Italy squad, but Belotti's work rate, his aerial prowess, and his willingness to run the channels make him a constant menace. Bearing in mind that I don't think he'll start though, I would also say Lorenzo Insigne, Federico Bernardeschi and Federico Chiesa are all relatively underappreciated outside of Italy. And if even they seem too obvious, then I'll say Leonardo Spinazzola at left back, who has just had the best season of his career at Roma. Wales. Harry Wilson. It remains to be seen how Wales will line up at Euro 2020. One suspects Rob Page will play a 4-3-3 with Gareth Bale and Dan James starting in attack, but who takes that third spot alongside them appears to be a matter of some debate. I think Wales' 2 most underrated players are both in competition for it, namely Cardiff City target man Kiefer Moore, who scored 20 goals in the Championship last season, and Liverpool's Harry Wilson, who would play in much more of a fluid sort of false 9 role. I think that Moore may make more sense for the Euros, but I think Wilson is Wales' most underrated player. Outstanding for both Hull City and Derby County, I think his performances at Bournemouth ought to have been good enough to secure him another Premier League loan move, and he proved once again last season with Cardiff that he is too good for the Championship. He is a Premier League player in waiting, he could be a real weapon for Wales at Euro 2020, and I don't just mean from set pieces. Switzerland. Remo Freuler. Switzerland have plenty of underrated players who always seem to fly under the radar, but I think Remo Freuler has been one of the most underrated players in Europe over the last couple of seasons, so he takes the crown. Gianpiero Gasparini's thrilling Atalanta side are a team best associated with the way in which they move the ball, their flair and technique in midfield, and the goals of the likes of Luis Muriel, Duvan Zapata, and Josip Ilicic in attack. The glue which binds them all together, though, in many respects, is Remo Freuler anchoring the side in midfield. The workhorse in midfield for Atalanta, alongside Martin de Roon, Freuler is a brilliant midfield all-rounder with an exceptional work ethic. He's probably less well known and less celebrated than Switzerland's captain Granit Xhaka, but I think he is more talented and far more important to Switzerland than his compatriot and midfield comrade. Denmark. Jonas Wind. A great shout, if I say so myself. I haven't really seen anyone outside of Denmark talking about Jonas Wind ahead of Euro 2020. Denmark have a solid squad, a fantastic manager, and a group that they are more than capable of progressing from, and Jonas Wind could prove to be their wildcard, albeit most likely off the bench. Only 22 years of age, Wind is an unusual player in some respects. The son of former Danish international goalkeeper Per Wind, though he is 6'3" tall and far from the quickest, he operates typically in a sort of slightly withdrawn role where his clever movement, quick feet, and eye for goal have provided him with an impressive attacking output. He scored 17 goals and made 8 assists from 32 appearances for FC Copenhagen this season, and he has already bagged 3 goals from just 7 caps for the Danish national team. So, if everything is blowing in the right direction for Denmark this summer, Wind could well be one to watch. I apologise, I hate puns. Finland. Jere Uronen. Among the most obscure shouts in this video, I cannot claim to have watched Jere Uronen week in, week out for the last 12 months. But I have watched him a couple of times for Finland and in both the Europa and Champions League for Genk. Genk tend not to sign too many duds, and Uronen has already been a really dependable fullback for the Belgian side for a number of years. First capped by Finland at the age of only 17, Uronen has already won 46 caps for his country, aged 26 now. An attack-minded fullback, Uronen isn't rapid, but he can run for days, and his wonderful left foot could prove crucial to a Finland team that may rely on set pieces and balls into the box in order to score goals at Euro 2020. Belgium. Hans van Aken. If Hans van Aken was 20 years old and enjoyed a season anything like the last of his 4 at Club Brugge, there would be a queue of clubs 5 miles long trying to sign him, including some of Europe's biggest clubs. During that time, you can count using your fingers the number of players who have scored and assisted with that level of consistency from midfield in a European top flight. A man who guarantees 20-goal contributions a season these days, without fail, even at 28, I am surprised no one has taken him off Club Brugge's hands, and I think he is without a doubt Belgium's most underrated player. However, the quality at Roberto Martinez's disposal in midfield means that I think it is unlikely that he will actually play many minutes at Euro 2020. So, as the underrated player most likely to actually exceed expectations for Belgium at Euro 2020, I would have to pick Yannick Carrasco. Russia. Alexander Sobolev. If Ertem Dzyuba can be considered underrated, then I would pick him for Russia. Coming into the Euros off the back of a brilliant season, the 6'6" monster from Moscow is likely to cause problems against international defenders. On the basis that he is one of Russia's best known players though, outside of Russia at least, my choice is Alexander Sobolev. A fellow Russian, a fellow forward, and a fellow giant of Dzyuba's, though Sobolev is unsurprisingly dominant in the air and not particularly mobile, he is also good on the ball. Or, to recycle that rotten old cliche, he has good feet for a big man. Aged 24, Sobolev has already scored 3 goals from 6 caps for the Russian national team, and if he were to play up front alongside Dzyuba at any point during Euro 2020, you'll be looking at one of the tallest strike partnerships in the history of the sport. Netherlands. Owen Wijndal. Assuming that Wout Weghorst is no longer underrated, having only been outscored by Robert Lewandowski, Andre Silva and Erling Haaland in the Bundesliga last season, and that Ryan Gravenberch is rightly considered to be one of the finest teenage footballers on the planet, then my choice for the Netherlands is Owen Wijndal. A familiar face to subscribers and regular viewers of this channel, having featured in a few different videos in the past, Wijndal is an attacking fullback or wingback with enormous potential. He has been a revelation ever since he broke through at AZ Alkmaar, and his fine form this season looks set to assure him of a starting berth in Frank de Boer's squad. If the Netherlands play with 3 centre-backs at Euro 2020, which I suspect they will, Wijndal and his opposite fullback Denzel Dumfries should be given plenty of licence to get forward and attack. Ukraine. Marlos. One of a handful of Brazilian-born players who will be representing their adopted European home nations at Euro 2020, Shakhtar Donetsk star Marlos goes under the radar primarily due to the fact that he plays his club football in Ukraine. An outstanding servant to Shakhtar Donetsk for the last 7 seasons, Marlos is quick, skillful, and fantastic in the final third. A prolific scorer and creator of goals from the right flank at club level, he has only actually scored once, from 18 caps, for the Ukrainian national team to date. He always catches my eye for Shakhtar though, and I suspect he'll be a starter for Ukraine at the Euros. He features in this video on the assumption that Ruslan Malinovsky's talents are too well appreciated following his excellent season at Atalanta, along with Alexander Zinchenko, who I think is broadly underrated, but is surely among Ukraine's better known players. Austria. Sasha Kalajdzic. When I drafted this video about a week ago, when the final Euro 2020 squads were announced, Sasha Kalajdzic seemed like a great shout. However, in the last few days, a flurry of articles have been written about him, so perhaps he is not quite as underrated as I had assumed. Nevertheless, I still think he's the best shout from Austria, whose squad play their club football almost exclusively in Germany. Even taller than Ertem Zuba and Alexander Sobolev, Sasha Kalajdzic stands at 6'7" tall, making him the same height as Peter Crouch. Poleaxed by Tyrone Mings in England's warm-up game against Austria, Kalajdzic is strong, impressive on the ball, and has no lack of self-belief. Having scored 16 goals in 33 games for Stuttgart in the Bundesliga this season, there's high hopes in Austria that he can make a splash for Franco Foda's men in Group C. North Macedonia. Arian Ademi. Another man who we have talked about a couple of times in the past on this channel, Arian Ademi was famously banned from football for doping for a period of 4 years by UEFA in 2015. A former Croatian international who now represents North Macedonia, Ademi's ban was later reduced to 2 years, and since returning to football in 2017, he has been outstanding for Dinamo Zagreb. A born leader with a remarkable work rate, Ademi reads the game well, he's strong in the tackle, and he never tires, neither mentally nor physically. He probably made a wise decision choosing to represent North Macedonia, given Croatia's tremendous depth in midfield, and he will be crucial to Igor Angelovski's side at the Euros. England. Kieran Trippier. It's often said that English players are overhyped and overvalued, and in some cases that may be true, but not all. Kieran Trippier is one such example, having been signed by Atletico Madrid for less than £20 million and having been superb ever since. Trippier was, people tend to forget, probably England's standout player and certainly Gareth Southgate's primary creative force at the 2018 World Cup. He followed that up with a tricky season at Spurs, but since signing for Atletico, he has been arguably the most impressive right-back in the Spanish game. The reaction to Trippier's inclusion in the England squad suggests he is certainly underrated in England, and I wouldn't be at all surprised to see him start at the finals as a wing-back in a back 3/5. Outside of England, I suspect Declan Rice is England's most underrated player, due to the lack of European football and the unglamorous position in which he plays. Croatia. Šime Vrsaljko. 2 Atletico Madrid right-backs feature in very quick succession, and I feel this one requires a bit more of an explanation. For a start, most of the Croatia squad is very well known and appreciated these days, so I am making the assumption that everyone recognises the quality of Marcelo Brozovic and Mario Pasalic in midfield. As for Vrsaljko, he has played just 24 league games in the last 3 seasons, aged 29. That is a pretty shocking record for a man who should be hitting his peak right now, and Vrsaljko has been, in part, a victim of Trippier's success at Atletico Madrid. In 2019 and 2020, Vrsaljko didn't win any caps for Croatia, but since returning to the international fold, he has impressed in all 4 of his caps in 2021. I just think he always looks really solid in Zlatko Dalic's side. He's athletic, disciplined, and though he makes few headlines, I think he's been a really good servant to Croatia. So, with few obscure names about, I feel he deserves the recognition. Scotland. Che Adams. I found Scotland to be quite difficult, to be honest. I quite like Scott McKenna at Nottingham Forest, though I'm not sure he's underrated. Scott McTominay has perhaps proved a few doubters wrong this season, and I have been impressed by young David Turnbull at Celtic, but I think most people recognise that he is a very good prospect. In the end, I went with a man who is as Scottish as haggis, bagpipes, and poor lifestyle choices. That's right, it is Leicester native Che McAdams, whose father is English, whose mother is English, but crucially, whose mother's mother is not. She is Scottish, and since March 2021, Adams has been a Scottish international. Following a wretched debut campaign in the Premier League, I thought Adams had a really good season at Southampton, and I think he is Scotland's best forward. Czech Republic. Lukáš Masopust. Another tough one, I almost went for Pavel Kadajaba for the Czech Republic. It isn't talked about as much in England since it's Czechia, but a bit like Scotland at left back or Slovenia in goal, 2 of Czechia's best players play in the same position, namely Kadajabek and Vladimir Koufal at right back. Meanwhile, Jakub Brabec, who scored against England a couple of years ago, has looked like a solid centre-back whenever I've seen him play. In the end, I went with Lukáš Masopust, who I'm surprised hasn't left Czechia yet. Previously linked with West Ham United, who will, presumably soon, have as many Czech players as Wolves have Portuguese players, Masopust shares a surname with Czechoslovakia's greatest ever player, though I am told he is of no relation. A gifted right-sided midfielder who is always looking to get on the ball and make things happen, I would be amazed if he didn't start for Jaroslav Šilhavý at the Euros, despite having only won 11 caps for his country to date. Spain. Ferran Torres. In Spain itself, I think Leeds United centre-back Diego Llorente might be in with a shout, given the fact that I thought he really grew as his first season at Leeds went on, and a lot of Spanish football fans seemed irked by his inclusion. Personally, I think he did much more to justify selection than young Eric Garcia. More broadly though, and outside of Spain, I don't think people fully yet appreciate the talents of Ferran Torres, who is more than capable of becoming Spain's main man for the next decade. He has already scored 6 goals from 11 caps for Spain from wide areas, and he looks as though he could flourish under Luis Enrique. Sweden. Alexander Isak. Sweden will be without the vast experience of Zlatan Ibrahimovic due to injuries at this summer's Euros, but that doesn't mean that they will be totally lacking in goals. A man almost half Ibrahimovic's age may well prove to be Jana Andersson's biggest threat up front, given that Alexander Isak scored 17 goals in 34 La Liga games for Real Sociedad this season. Tall, lightning quick, and excellent on the ball, Isak shot to fame at the age of about 15, but it has taken him until now to really get going in one of Europe's top leagues. I still think Sweden could struggle for goals at Euro 2020, but Isak ought to be their biggest threat, and his talents perhaps aren't being discussed quite enough. Poland. Kamil Jóźwiak. Kamil Jóźwiak is an unusual player in some respects, since he has been really underwhelming and ineffective at Derby County, but he continues to play a vital role for Poland. Clearly, he is a young man of considerable talent, and while some have suggested that he isn't physically up to the challenge of playing championship football, I also don't think he has been particularly well utilised by either Philip Cocu or Wayne Rooney. He takes the crown as my underrated Pole on the basis that everyone recognises the fact that Piotr Zielinski is excellent and he is therefore no longer underrated. Slovakia. Ondrej Duda. There are some obvious similarities between Kamil Jóźwiak and Ondrej Duda, both of whom were largely ineffective in England, but will be important players for their national teams at this summer's Euros. Duda's stint in England came on loan at Norwich, as they were relegated from the Premier League, but last summer he signed for Cologne, and he has just enjoyed an eye-catching campaign in the Bundesliga. A gifted and creative number 10, Duda will likely start as a false 9 or as a number 10 for Slovakia at this summer's finals. Hungary. David Segeya. Hungary faced an extraordinary uphill battle at Euro 2020, drawn in the group of death and without their starman Dominik Szoboszlai, who took them to the finals. If they are to grind out any points in Group F, they will likely need some heroic performances from David Segea, shielding their back 3 or 4. It looks as though manager Marco Rossi may play a fairly unorthodox 3-1-3-2 formation, with Segea playing in that pivotal role in front of Hungary's centre-backs, who may be kept very busy. The Ferencváros star is very defence-minded as a midfielder, with an excellent work rate and a passion for keeping opponents quiet, intercepting and winning the ball. Portugal. Nuno Mendes. I think 18-year-old Sporting left-back Nuno Mendes is Portugal's most underrated player, primarily because most people haven't seen him in action or just haven't seen much of him, but I don't think he'll play too many minutes at Euro 2020. That is because of the fine form of Rafael Guerreiro, who I would put down as Portugal's most underrated player that is likely to play, and the one that I think is most likely to exceed expectations. Outstanding for Borussia Dortmund for some time now, Guerreiro is undoubtedly among the best attacking fullbacks or wingbacks in the world, and his 6 goals and 11 assists from that position this season is testament to that fact. Germany. Thomas Müller. On the grounds that I think Thomas Müller is probably the most underrated player of his generation, there's no way that I couldn't pick him as Germany's most underrated player at Euro 2020. Recalled to the national team, along with Mats Hummels last month by Joachim Löw, following more than 2 years in exile, the Germany boss's hand had been weakened by a couple of poor results. The reality is that Müller should never have been away from the international scene, having led the assist charts across Europe's top 5 leagues in each of the last 2 seasons. Such an intelligent footballer with a fantastic mentality, if Germany are to surprise people at Euro 2020, it may be Müller, whom they rely on to come up with the goods. France. Jules Koundé. The final inclusion in this video will come as very little surprise to long-term subscribers. As I have said on numerous occasions, I really like the look of Jules Koundé, and I think he is already among the best centre-backs in Europe at the age of only 22. Outstanding for Sevilla and Bordeaux before that, Koundé finally earned the recognition of a call-up to the France squad last month, winning his first cap around a week ago. Koundé isn't the tallest in centre-back terms, but he's rarely found wanting in the air. Mobile, intelligent and comfortable on the ball, it speaks volumes that he is already a part of France's squad for a major finals, given their embarrassment of riches at centre-back. I do also think that Karim Benzema continues to be underrated outside of Spain and that he is without doubt one of the greatest centre-forwards of the last 10 to 20 years. Meanwhile, Corentin Tolisso doesn't seem to get much appreciation within the English press, but he always looks so comfortable in France's midfield, surrounded by world-class players. So that is it for today's video. It is always tough with videos like this since to deem a player as being underrated, I have to try and weigh up the general mood and opinion surrounding them, and it will inevitably lean into a certain degree of geographical bias. So, I am likely to be particularly influenced by the views of a player in England since that is where I live. But hopefully I picked out 1 or 2 players that are broadly underrated, and more importantly, hopefully you enjoyed today's video. It is now 25.5 degrees, so I'm probably going to go out and buy a paddling pool and jump in it. If you did enjoy today's video, go ahead and smash the like button, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and make sure that you are subscribed and have notifications turned on for HITC Sevens. Oh, and you can also find me on social media, on Twitter or Instagram by the username at HITC Sevens on both, should you wish to do so.